So our last lecture that we had on Manly P. Hall's 10 Basic Rules for Better Living, we covered 1 through 3. Today we're going to cover 4 through 5. Number 4 is do not accumulate more than you need. There is no real distinction in being the richest man in the graveyard. Many earnest citizens act as though there were pockets and shrouds. We are supposed to have outgrown the primitive belief that we should bury a man's goods with him so that his spirit might enjoy them in the afterworld. Here again, the middle course is the wisest. Let us reserve some of our energy for enjoyment and not give all of ourselves to the task of accumulation. Many a man who has made $1 million has not lived to spend it. A rich life can be more practical than a monumental bank account. So if we're dead, what does it matter if we're the richest person? You know, do the dead care? Would any of the dead know who's the wealthiest person in the graveyard? Are we able to take our wealth and material possessions to the next world? Jesus said, "For how is a man benefited if he should gain the whole world and should lose his soul? Or what payment shall a man give to regain his soul?" If we are greedy, then we can assume that we have egos of greed, and that means we have parts of our essence, parts of our consciousness imprisoned within them. If we take the time to study our minds and hearts, we may find that we are, in fact, greedy in some way. If so, let us ask ourselves, how does greed benefit us and those around us? If we don't feel that we are greedy, let's ask ourselves, am I charitable? When someone needs our help, do we help them? Or do we worry about our bank account looking a little less full? Our egos of greed can cloud our perception. They do cloud our perception. We think, or we may think, that money is going to save us and that money creates happiness. Our conditioned consciousness that is trapped within greed has us hypnotized and in a delusional state. If we study today's humanity, what do we find pertaining to greed? We may find that a large percentage of our lives is motivated by greed. Most of us are taught from a young age that we have to earn a living, or meaning that we have to make money in order to survive. Over time, our need to make a living in order to pay our bills, buy food, clothing, take care of our family, etc., turns into something more. Over time, we may become greedy, and this can happen at a very, very early period of our life. Because we may find, when we meditate and we look back on our lives, we may find that we envied what others have or had, and we became like consumed by jealousy. That mistaken perception that we call subjective reasoning creates many envious monsters within us. And those egos may motivate us to find a way to obtain whatever it is that we desire. It may be that we know someone that has a great deal of wealth, and they are capable of owning many things that our envious, greedy aggregates desire. There may be many factors. There's more than one, obviously. What we see on TV, the internet. As we get older, we begin to think about death, and we may begin to fear losing what we have, or we may believe we can take our wealth with us. Throughout our history, people believed they could take their wealth with them to the afterlife. Many cultures all over the world buried people with some of their possessions. Why? Early religions often held that the dead carried objects with them on their travel to the afterlife. People would entomb their loved ones with items that could accompany their journey. When we visit museums all over the world, we find artifacts from burial sites. And throughout history, kings, queens, warlords, pharaohs, emperors, etc., were buried with what they considered their most beloved possessions. This practice was motivated by tradition, religion, etc. Today, that tradition is still alive. Family and friends routinely bury or inter the deceased with treasured possessions from life. The following is from a lecture called After We Die, given by a Gnostic instructor from Glorianne. When we die, most of what we right now think as ourselves will be taken away from us. It is obvious that when we die, the physical body is taken from us. What is also taken is the vital body, which is the energy of the physical body. What is also taken is our personality, our name, our language, our culture, tastes, what we like as music, what we like as food, our clothing tastes. All of those behavioral characteristics that we think are our identity. All of that is abandoned. What goes into the other world is the raw content of our mind and heart. And trapped inside of that is the consciousness. The person who dies faces three potential outcomes. The ones who have earned it achieve a vacation of sorts in the superior worlds, in which they experience the pleasures, happiness, and serenity of the heaven, those dimensions that are not corrupted by desire. The second path is to be reborn immediately with no break, but instead immediately come back into a physical body to continue suffering their karma, the results of their actions. The third outcome is where the person is unable to pay their debts or to earn the ticket to have a vacation. So they descend into the lower worlds, what we call hell, in order to start paying what they owe. So today, why is it that we think we can take our material possessions with us to the afterlife? Is it perhaps our sentiments, our attachments, ego, etc.? Is it because we lost our connection to divinity? Is it because we have idols? Do we worship the golden calf? Why is it that we believe we can enter paradise with our ego, with our pride, anger, etc.? 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 through 10, Paul states the following. Or do you not know that evil men do not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. No fornicators, neither worshipers of idols, neither adulterers, neither sexual molesters, neither homosexuals, neither frauds, nor thieves, neither drunkards, nor the insolent, neither extortioners. These do not inherit the kingdom of God. Jesus said, I say to you that it is easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. But by rich, we mean someone who has a lot of ego and attachment to things in this physical world. If we are attached to our wealth and material possessions, then it's very hard for us to enter the kingdom of God. Obviously, in this day and age, we need to earn money. We need to be upright citizens. And what do we mean by upright citizens? We need to abide by the laws of the land. We need to earn a living. If we do not pay our bills, taxes, help feed, clothe, and provide shelter for ourselves and perhaps some loved ones, are we acting in an upright manner? It's okay to have money. It's okay to save money. It's okay to have wealth. But what we do with our wealth is what matters. and how we acquire our wealth as well. How do we behave when we have money? And what are we doing with it? Are we creating attachment to our wealth? Are we stressed out when our bank account gets low? What do we do if we have a lot of money? What would we do if someone needed our help and we have the means to help them? Obviously, we don't want to give money to just anyone. There are ways to help others financially without having to give them cash. The point is what are our actions inside and outside of us? How do we think, feel, and act? Do we fight and argue about money with our spouse or anyone for that matter? Is money all we think about? Is wealth our daily motivating factor for living? Do we love to buy things for ourselves, and are we creating attachments to those possessions? If we do not have a lot of wealth, do we envy and covet what others have? Are we creating a lot of jealousy because we covet what we see on TV and all around us? How much energy are we wasting on frivolous activities that involve greed and covetousness? What should we be doing? How should we be utilizing our energies? Excuse me. So the following is from a lecture given by a Gnostic instructor from Glory Ann pertaining to ethics and non-virtuous actions. Covetousness. Covetousness or envy. Why? To my experience, it is because it is so strong. Samael Aun Weor said that envy is the secret trigger of all action in the world. When we analyze what is happening with our governments, with big companies, with our family members, with ourselves, we can pretty much always find envy. So what is envy? It is wanting what someone else has. We want that car, we want that job. One country wants the resources of another, wants the respect of another. One family member wants the money of another, the love that another one gets. Envy is when we want something that is not naturally ours. Envy always says, I want it. I challenge you to watch for that in your mind. I want it. That is covetousness. In most cases, we experience it in relation with material things. I want money, a spouse, a better place to live, a big house, an island. We have a list. Probably had it since we were kids. I will give you a little secret, burn it, burn the list. You will have so much more peace when you have no covetousness, when you are content with what God has given you. In the Bible, it says, let every man accept what God has given him. Who among us does that? Who accepts gratefully what we have? We are all craving and dying and scratching out a living, trying to get more and get more and get more. Why? Because we have not comprehended death. We have not understood that we are going to die, and all those things we are working so hard to get will be useless. So why do we spend years and years and years struggling so hard to get something that we have to give up? What is the value of that? What is the point? Reflect on that. When a desire emerges in you, really reflect. What will this fundamentally change for my soul? What will this change about the moment I am dying? Have you meditated on the moment of your death? Sit and imagine it. Do not hide from it. Do not run from it. If you avoid death, when it comes, you will be unprepared. And you will die in a panic and afraid, and those energies will affect your next transition. But if you prepare every day for death, it will not come as a surprise. You will be ready, and you will pass into the transition with happiness, with contentment, conscious. The true Gnostic prepares for death every day. The true Gnostic path is a path of dying from moment to moment, preparing for death. And if you are doing that, what is there to be attached to? Why do you really need those shoes or those new pants or the new computer or to redecorate the whole house, etc.? Why? It is not that anything is wrong with those objects. What is wrong is our attitude and our enslavement to attachment. Attachment is the key factor of covetousness. The state of our world is because of this factor. Some examples that you can look for in your own mind: how nice if I were the one in charge. Now you might hear that and think that does not sound like covetousness to me. It sounds like pride. But it is covetousness. How else will we get the idea unless we are trying to get it from someone else? We see the boss who is in charge. Look at that nice car he drives. Everybody respects him. They bow at his feet when he walks by. Everybody salutes the guy in charge. I want to be that guy. That's covetousness. All of these apply spiritually. A lot of people want to be the Lama or the master who all the students bow to. Why? Not to benefit the student, but to get the praise, to feed pride, to hide from their fear. How nice to have the wife of so-and-so, to have their possessions. How nice if I could eat that food. This is all covetousness. How nice if others knew me to be humble, to be compassionate, to be wise. Every spiritually inclined person has thought that. I hope everybody can see me as a spiritual person, very humble. That is covetousness. This is not true spiritually. That is not true spiritually. When you want something from someone else, when you are attached to how people see you, when you want their attention, when you want their respect, it is covetousness. It is not sincere. It is not conscious. It is the ego. How nice if people in high places respected me. Some people think if everybody respected me, even celebrities would respect me, even politicians would respect me. That is covetousness. How nice if I could be reborn in nirvana, heaven, with powers and servants. Covetousness. How nice if I had the ability to go into the astral body. How nice if I was a master of samadhi. Covetousness. We should not covet what we do not have. If you want something different, analyze that want and give it to God. This does not mean that you sit back and wait. We have to give up our desires, analyze our wants, but we also have to work for what is right. Some people always say, well, if I accept what God has given me, does that mean I do not have to work? Does that mean I should quit my job? If I am not supposed to worry about my clothes and paying my bills and eating, should I just stop doing anything? No, because if you do not do anything, you will starve. You have to work, you have to act, you have to be prudent, you have to be intelligent. And that was all from a Gnostic instructor from Glorian. And I felt that that was very important to read to you guys because it is profound. Because we all have that within us. We all covet something. So if we spend our whole life trying to obtain what others have, or if we make a lot of money, but we are selfish with what we have, what are the consequences of our actions? Jesus said, do not place treasures for yourselves on the earth where moths and corrosion disfigure, and where thieves break in and steal, but place treasures for yourselves in heaven where neither moths nor corrosion disfigure, and where thieves neither break in nor steal. So, how should we spend the time we've been given while we're here in a physical body? This is something we should all meditate on. Should we spend our time trying to accumulate as much money as possible and accumulating as many material possessions as we can? Should we spend our time coveting other people's material possessions and thus using up all our creative, mental, and emotional energy, fantasizing about the things that we don't have? Should we invest our time in something authentic, real, and true? We cannot, the fact of the matter is we cannot take our material possessions to heaven with us. All our wealth cannot go with us into the next world, and we have no need of it there. Our true treasures in heaven are made through sacrifice, selflessness, compassion, generosity, humility, love, kindness, charity, chastity, purity, divinity. We should work to build a relationship with our inner divinity, and remember that money, envy, covetousness, etc., do not create authentic happiness. It's a good idea to work on paying attention to ourselves. It's a good idea to become aware of how we think, feel, and act from moment to moment. Because we are much more than a greedy, egotistical person. There's much more to us. So number 5, learn to relax. Great tension is an abomination. The more tense we become, the more stupidly we are likely to act. And according to the old Buddhist, stupidity is a cardinal sin. Today, many so-called efficient people are perpetually on the verge of a nervous breakdown. This is not so likely to be due to overwork as to unreasonable driving impulses from within themselves. Some say that they are overtaxing their resources to keep their jobs or to maintain extravagant families. Whether you believe it or not, you are a better producer and a better provider if you do not collapse from psychic exhaustion at some critical moment when you are most in need of good health. If your associates do not realize this, they may be in need of practical counsel. So obviously, when he was talking about this was a while ago. And there are some places throughout the world where people are overworked. So I don't completely agree with this statement, but I mostly agree with it. Being overworked can cause us to become imbalanced. Sometimes we overwork ourselves. Sometimes it's not someone else overworking us. Sometimes it's just us. We become addicted to our work or our research or whatever it is that we're really into, some kind of hobby. But nevertheless, if our day-to-day life is nothing but work, we can obviously do our best to treat each moment at work as a spiritual experience, remembering divinity. How? Well, we can remain mindful, conscious, and aware of ourselves. We can practice being humble and not being so negative about our current circumstance. One of the ways we suffer at work is by not remaining in the here and now. While at work, we daydream that we're somewhere else and wish that we were not at work, but doing something else. If we were to transform our thoughts of wish I wasn't here or I'd rather be doing that into something like I need to provide for myself and my family. My work helps others. Then we may learn to be more humble and learn to enjoy our vocation. We worry about all kinds of things that we really have no control over, and this causes us to become tense. So it is important to relax when we take time to meditate, when we sit to meditate, we begin with our posture and get into a comfortable position. And this is helpful. Meditation is very helpful. It helps us balance ourselves, especially if we have chaotic lives. And during that transition, when we're getting ourselves comfortable, we may become aware of how tense we are. But why are we tense? What has created tension? It's usually stress, anxiety, anger, fear, etc. Our job, our family, our friends, news, politics, all the impressions we take in. The way we live life in general may help create stress and tension. It also depends on how we react to it. How do we feel, think, and act while at work, watching the news, or reading the paper? Do we become stressed and angry? Do we feel drained of energy afterwards? If we follow politics or watch the news, we should pay attention to how we feel physically, emotionally, and mentally. Nicholas Gomez Davia said, "Man matures when he stops believing that politics solves his problems." How about when we're with friends or family? Do we gossip? Do we talk about worldly matters that create stress and anxiety? Do we forget ourselves? How about at our job? Do we like our job? Do we feel that we are overworked? How do we feel about our boss and our coworkers? Do we pay attention to our thoughts and our emotions? Are we self-observing while at work? Do we remember our innermost being while at work, which is self-remembering? Are we practicing upright behaviors? Do we have some form of ethical discipline? Or are we thinking badly of others and speaking negatively of others, whether it be, externally or internally? Are we spending a significant amount of energy stressing about things that we have no control over? If we are, why? All of the diverse circumstances that we allow ourselves to stress over create a lot of tension. But do these issues last forever? Or are they impermanent? The first noble truth, oops, I'm sorry. So this statement is from a lecture called Suffering and Right View, given by a Gnostic instructor at Glory Inn. The first noble truth tells us that suffering is everywhere, that all manifest creatures suffer. Life itself is suffering, life as we know it. The comprehension of that one truth would cause radical changes in our every moment, in our every behavior. But we do not comprehend that truth, so we have to proceed and understand what that truth means and how to change it. So we can help ourselves by comprehending that to exist in this world is to endure suffering in some way, and that everything passes. This too shall pass. Suffering will eventually pass. Something else that I feel is very important that personally helped me was when I heard an instructor state the following: we can treat every moment as a spiritual experience. And if we want to end suffering, we have to comprehend what causes it. And this is from the same lecture, Suffering and Right View. Unfortunately, the psyche that we have believes that somehow at that horizon line that we see up ahead, there is this plateau where suffering will cease, where we will get all of the objects and circumstances that we need in order to have happiness. And so we keep running towards that horizon line, which we think is a plateau. And we keep saying to ourselves, if I can only get a better job, if I can only get a better boss, if I can only get a better apartment or a better spouse or a better friend, better clothes, more money, more respect, once I get that promotion, then I will be happy. This is what we call a delusion. It is not real. This delusion is produced by what we call the I, the ego, the sense of self. So round and round, we chase our desires. And desire is ultimately never satisfied. The ego is never satisfied. Our desires create stress and tension. When we desire something, we waste a catastrophic amount of energy in order for it to be satisfied. But if we spend our time and energy aspiring to know our inner divinity, to observe ourselves, to become a better person from moment to moment, we will experience life in a spiritual manner. And in this way, life wouldn't be so stressful. Life would not be so dark and gloomy. Living life this way gives it meaning. There is meaning in this great drama we call life. Most of us here on earth are searching for the meaning of our existence. But most of us are searching aimlessly. We think that the meaning of life is in our desires, in a video game, money, sex, intoxicants, to follow someone, to serve ourselves, which all of this is a form of idolatry. Or we simply have no idea and we give up. Perhaps some of us feel that there is no meaning and this has all happened by chance. Carl Jung stated that meaningless inhibits fullness of life and is therefore equivalent to illness. Meaning makes a great many things endurable. When we are unconscious, life has no meaning. Whether we are rich or poor, has family and social position or not, alters nothing. For outer circumstances are far from giving our life a meaning. Man positively needs general ideas and convictions that will give a meaning to our life and enable us to find our place in the universe. So, like I said before, building a relationship with our higher power will help us find the meaning that we've been searching for. Putting the sacred spiritual teachings to use in our daily life will help us come to know ourselves better and better. Our inner guiding star, our inner compass, will help show us the way. Jesus said, "Do not love the world, neither the things that are in it, for whoever loves the world does not have the love of the Father in him. For everything that is in the world, the desire of the body and the lust of the eyes and the pride of the temporal life, these are from the world. The world is passing and its lust, but he who does the will of excuse me, he who does the will of God continues for eternity." So through our process of building a relationship with our innermost being, we come to depend on its guidance and learn to renounce the mundaneness of this world. The teachings of Samael Aun Weor help us learn how to develop a relationship with our Divine Mother and Father. They help us awaken our intuition, listen to our conscience. His teachings help us to learn how to meditate and to pray. A prayer that's great to perform daily. You read about in his book, Intro to Gnosis. And the prayer is, "You who are my true being, you who are my internal God, help me, guide me, make me see my own defects." Samael Aun Weor said in his book, Introduction to Gnosis, to concentrate on this prayer until deep sleep arrives. Try to discover all your defects. We advise you to read the Bible. The word of the Divine Master is found in the 4 Gospels. There you will see the virtues that you need. There you will discover the virtues that you lack. Wherever a virtue is lacking, a defect exists. So when we pray this prayer with our heart, we are begging our innermost being to help us discover our egos. And over time, we discover them through the process of self-observation, self-remembering, and then we meditate and we try to comprehend them. As we discover our defects and meditate on them, we learn through experience that we don't have to stress over everything that we cannot control. We don't have to react to everything we see and hear on TV. We've been taught most of our life that we should react to things without processing them first. So when faced with different circumstances, we've learned to react in certain ways because we have egos that interpret things for us. Our egos interpret the impressions that we take in through our five senses. And then we react with pride, anger, envy, lust, etc. When we react that way, we are unconscious. And this type of reasoning is subjective. And our anger and our pride and our envy and lust, etc., will help us to keep continuing to create a lot of suffering for ourselves and for other people. So why do we react without observing and studying the situation? Because we've been taught that. We've conditioned ourselves that way. Perhaps because we've been behaving in certain ways for so long that we have completely forgotten ourselves. So why are we stressed? Why are we tense? It's perhaps that we are psychologically and completely asleep. We don't even know what we're doing to ourselves from time to time. But if we observe ourselves from moment to moment, we discover that we get frustrated and stressed very easily. But why? Throughout our lives, we've been fantasizing and daydreaming about everything we would rather be doing than what we were currently doing. And we created things inside of us that are never satisfied. For instance, while at work, we think about what we'd rather be doing instead of being focused on the task at hand. When our spouse upsets us, or we don't feel we have much in common, we may fantasize about another spouse. If we don't have a spouse, we may fantasize about, finding one or finding the perfect one. But most of this, if not all of it, is a lie that we feed ourselves. None of us are perfect. What do we create within ourselves when we fantasize, desire, gossip, covet more money, depend on political leaders to fix everything, depend on something external for our happiness? What do our desires for self-gratification create? Well, they create tension, anxiety, anger, stress, laziness, greed, envy, lust, all kinds of illusions, all kinds of suffering, right? All kinds of tension, all kinds of stress, and all kinds of ego. Samael Aun Weor said, "It is easy to mistake desire with that which we call love. Desire is a substance that decomposes into thoughts, volitions, sentiments, romances, poetries, tenderness, sweetness, anger, hatred, violence, etc. The poison of desire always cheats people. Those who are in love always swear that they are loving, when in reality they are desiring. Love has its peculiar happiness and its infinite beauty. Most of us do not know that which is love. Love is similar to the sediment shown by a newborn baby. Love forgives everything, gives everything. It does not demand anything. It does not ask for anything. It only wants the best for the one that it loves, and that is all. The true sediment of love is perfect, and Satan knows nothing of perfection, because Satan is desire. If you want to love, be prudent. Do not confuse love with desire. Do not allow yourself to be cheated by desire. the great swindler. Do not worry, cultivate the habit of being happy. Easier said than done, but it's a work in progress for all of us. Happiness comes from the being, not the ego. The ego does not know what happiness is. M stated the following: every man, woman is born intended to ascend to a higher place and position, to reach the higher or golden age of expression from within and from without is his or her natural inheritance, so that he or she can harmonize themselves with the finer forces which go to make up nature's highest expression. Man, woman was intended to become a commanding principle in nature. Man, woman is the master of their own destiny, yet he or she fails to realize that uncontrolled thoughts, passions, and desires, speech without thought, envy, hatred, and malice cause movements which do not harmonize man, woman with the keynote within. This disorganizes the harmony of the whole plan within and without, and thus brings about a retrograde movement. It does not mean that he or she is stopped in his or her evolution, but it withholds them from assuming positiveness, and it stops him or her from relating themselves to the urge which nature's consciousness would give them. The pull from his or her natural man-woman is withdrawn, for he or she has acted contrary to the wisdom of the Lord God of truth within. Through lack of harmony with his or her central note, he or she is not able to achieve the monumental objective for which he or she incarnated. Therefore, according to the cyclic law of being, he or she misses opportunities for this finer expression. So let's not waste our wonderful opportunity, this wonderful opportunity that we've been given. Let's come to recognize the desires we create, feed, and chase. The creation of our ego through desire disconnected us from reality and truth. The ego creates tension, all kinds of suffering. The ego is suffering, it's pain, bitterness, and withholds us from assuming positiveness. So, symbolically speaking, we have tangled ourselves in many self-created webs of illusion. In our inner spider, the ego feeds off the energy we spend trying to satisfy our desires. Again, symbolically speaking, in the beginning, before we conditioned ourselves, our consciousness represented a beautiful mirror that reflected the universe. Over time, we dropped that mirror and shattered it into many pieces. All those pieces represent our consciousness, which is conditioned and trapped within desire, trapped within our inner children of chaos that we created, which are psychological defects, vices, and errors. This is from the lecture Suffering and Right View from Glorianne. There are some of us who feel emptiness in our hearts. That emptiness becomes a black hole that we feed with negative behaviors. Some of us become addicted to mind-altering substances. Some of us become addicted to negative, perverse sexual behaviors. Some of us are addicted to buying things. We see others with a new car, clothes, house, etc., and become envious. We think, I've got to have that too, or I deserve one of those too. We are addicted to our desires and escaping reality. What we need is love. What we need is compassion for others. What we need is true happiness. So thankfully, we have some of our consciousness that is still free. Samael Aun Weor taught us that the average person has at least 3% consciousness that is not bottled up within desire, within the ego. And so we need to learn to utilize the 3%. We do this by becoming aware of our psychological defects, aggregates, vices, and errors. We put that 3% to work. In this way, we enter into a battle, which is a battle against ourself, our own sinning shadow. Excuse me. So our free consciousness, which could be represented as David, stands up to the ego, which can be represented as Goliath. And we do our best to remain aware, cognizant, and alert so that we can discover our pride, anger, envy, etc. And our anger, our ego, all of those things that we can categorize it as, they all create suffering. They all create tension. If we find ourselves in a situation that stimulates our egos to motivate us to react or think and feel a certain way, and we are aware of this process, or we become aware of this process, then we can study it. We also need to transform it and comprehend it. After we gain comprehension of whatever it may be, we can pray to our Divine Mother to destroy it. And little by little, we begin to change. We begin to process and react to things differently. We begin to discover the things that used to bother us and create tension don't anymore. Parts of our anger, our pride that we used to feel are gone. And what's replaced them is compassion and humility. Obviously, this isn't going to happen overnight. You know, it's a process that takes a lot of work. It is a battle that we can win, though. We all seek happiness, but the issue is we've been barking up the wrong tree. Samael Aun Weor stated in his chapter Happiness, people confuse pleasure with happiness. Parties, bar hopping, drinking sprees, and orgies are brutish pleasures, but they are not happiness. There are, however, wholesome get-togethers without overindulgence, vulgar behavior, and the abuse of alcohol, but that is not happiness either. People spend a lifetime looking for happiness everywhere and die without ever having found it. In America and everywhere, there are many who hope to win the lottery someday. They think that this way they will find happiness. Some, in fact, do win. However, this does not bring them the happiness for which they yearn so much for. When one is young, or when one is a young man, one dreams of the perfect woman, a princess from 1001 Arabian Nights, someone extraordinary. Then the harsh reality of life hits. A wife and small children to support, difficult financial problems. There is no doubt that as the children grow, so do the problems, and they might even become impossible to cope with. Naturally, as children get bigger, they need bigger shoes, which are more expensive. This is obvious. Naturally, as the children grow, their clothing is ever more costly. If you have money, it is no problem. But if not, then it is a serious matter, and there is a great deal of suffering. Everything would be more or less bearable with a good wife, but if a man is betrayed, that is, if his wife cheats on him, then what is the use of him struggling to earn money for the household? There are, unfortunately, extraordinary examples of wonderful women, true companions through both fortune and misfortune. However, to make the matters worse, their husbands take them for granted, and worse still, abandon them for other women who will embitter their lives. There are many young girls who dream of their prince. Unfortunately, the harsh reality is in fact different, and they end up marrying tyrants. The greatest dream for a woman is to have a lovely home and be a mother, a blessed predestination. However, even if she marries a good man who may be unlikely, all things come to pass. And in the end, sons and daughters get married and leave home, or they are ungrateful to their parents. Ultimately, family life ends. All in all, in this cruel world which we live, there are no happy people. All the unfortunate human beings are unhappy. In life, we have met many individuals who are loaded with money and full of problems. They are involved in lawsuits, overtaxed, etc. They are not happy. What is the use of being rich if one does not have good health? Sometimes they are more unfortunate than any beggar. Everything passes in this life: things, people, ideas. Those who have money and those who have none also pass away. Nobody experiences genuine happiness. Many people want to escape from themselves through drugs or alcohol. In truth, they not only fail to escape, but worse, they get trapped in the inferno of vice. Happiness is not achieved by running away from the me, myself, the ego. Instead, it would be interesting to grab the bull by the horns, to observe the eye, to study the eye, in order to discover the causes of suffering. When one discovers the real cause of so much misery and so much bitterness, it becomes obvious that something can be done. If we manage to eliminate our me, myself, our I of drinking sprees, our I of vices, and our I of attachments that cause so much heartfelt sorrow in us, if we manage to eliminate those worries that torment our minds and make us ill, etc., then clearly what arrives is that which is timeless, that which is beyond the body, that which is beyond attachments and beyond the mind, that which is truly beyond our comprehension and is called happiness. Unquestionably, while our consciousness remains trapped within the ego, the me, the myself, the I, in no way will it be able to know genuine happiness. Happiness has a quality that neither me, myself, the I, or the ego has ever known. So, true happiness is acquired after we liberate ourselves from the ego. True happiness comes from within. But we can acquire moments of happiness throughout our journey. We begin to discover true happiness throughout our struggles, our ordeals, trials, and tribulations. As we conquer parts of our false sense of self, we begin to know our true selves better and better. As we transform our hate into love, anger into compassion, pride into humility, envy into happiness for others, we begin to obtain true happiness, which comes from the being. We begin to know our purpose and discover a reason for our existence. We may also earn experiences from the being that give us gnosis of what happiness is and what it would be like to be without the ego. If we do the work, we begin to see and feel what it's like without the weight of our desires. These kinds of experiences help motivate us to keep going, to keep working, and help us in many ways. We can live without tension. We can know what love and happiness are. We can achieve victory. Again, we achieve authentic happiness after we have liberated ourselves from the ego and united with our inner divinity. Happiness, absence of suffering, comes from our innermost being. We all have work to do, obviously. So let's get to work.